What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA
Saturday, March 27th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we have a 9-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Eric Bledsoe from the New Orleans Pelicans playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing point guards, Eric Bledsoe has averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. He scored 39, 11, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 34, 33, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 23.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's $4,500 FanDuel salary and 100 less on DraftKings. So I know this is a back-to-back for Eric Bledsoe, so he probably won't play 34 minutes tonight. His minutes may get cut down to 25 to 28 minutes, but he doesn't need much to hit value. He's priced really low on both sites, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 229 points scored in this game, so that's a high-scoring game, and he scored 29, 25, 30, and 37 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Dallas Mavericks, so I think the price is right to take a shot on Eric Bledsoe here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, another point guard that I like is Ja Morant from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards, but Ja Morant has averaged 35.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He scored 52, 37, and 47 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 37, 30, and 40 minutes. He's projected at 37.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $7,500 FanDuel salary and 300 less on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, but especially on DraftKings. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. And I like this pick because he scored 52, 43, 22, and 43 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Jazz. So he would have got you way over 5 times value, 3 out of his last 4 games versus the Jazz. So it is a back-to-back for Ja Morant, but that hasn't been a problem for him so far this season. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. So I like Ja Morant here versus the Utah Jazz. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Marcus Smart has averaged 29 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 40, 28, and 31 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 37, and 39 minutes. He's projected at 30.7 fantasy points here tonight. On FanDuel, that's 5.6 times value. He's only $5,500 FanDuel salary, and he is $700 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price, but he is still playable over there on DraftKings. So he scored 34, 20, 39, and 7 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think he makes a pretty solid FanDuel play. He's got a great matchup, and he does pretty well on back-to-backs. So I like Marcus Smart here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay guys, it's time to announce the winner of our $100 weekly PayPal giveaway. And the winner is Christopher Jordan. Christopher Jordan, congratulations. You are the winner of our $100 PayPal giveaway. Please reply to the pinned comment below to collect your prize.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, another shooting guard that I like, I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Patty Mills from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Chicago Bulls, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing shooting guards, Patty Mills has averaged 19.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 9, 22, and 20 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 23, and 32 minutes. He's projected at 20.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.4 times value. He's 3,800 FanDuel salary and 400 more on DraftKings. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game, and he scored 26, 35, 10, 24, and 17 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Bulls. So that's okay player versus team history, getting you way over 5 times value 3 out of the last 5 games. So I like Patty Mills here versus the Chicago Bulls. Okay, who do we have at the small forward position? I like Rui Hachimura from the Washington Wizards playing the Detroit Pistons, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Rui Hachimura has averaged 24.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. But take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 40, 20, and 31 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 41, 34, and 40 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes, his production has been ramping up, and he's projected at 27.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.8 times value. But I think he can score over 30 fantasy points and get you 5 times value or more. He's 5,700 FanDuel salary and 200 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. It's a good matchup, a fast-paced game, so I like Rui Hachimura here versus the Detroit Pistons. Okay, another small forward that I like, especially on DraftKings, is RJ Barrett from the New York Knicks playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. RJ Barrett has averaged 30.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 50, 39, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 41, 39, and 39 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes, amazing production recently. He scored almost 30 fantasy points or more in all of his last 5 games. He's projected at 33.4 fantasy points here tonight. That's only 4.4 times value on FanDuel because he's 7,600 FanDuel salary. Although I think he can score 37 fantasy points in this one and get you 5 times value or more. And he's 600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. He scored 29, 34, 39, and 29 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Bucks. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game. It's a good matchup, so I like R.J. Barrett here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Lauri Markkanen from the Chicago Bulls playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing power forwards. Lauri Markkanen has averaged 28.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 29, 21, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 18, and 28 minutes. He's projected at 26.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $5,400 FanDuel salary, and he's $200 less on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. He scored 22 and 43 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Spurs. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game. So I think he makes a nice mid-range play, especially on DraftKings where he's $200 cheaper. So I like Lauri Markkanen here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, another power forward that I like is Jae'Sean Tate from the Houston Rockets playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Jae'Sean Tate has averaged 23.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He scored 31, 21, and 43 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 38, 24, and 40 minutes. He's projected at 25.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.8 times value. He's $5,400 FanDuel salary and $300 more on DraftKings. And he scored 31 fantasy points in his last game versus the Timberwolves. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup. It is a back-to-back, but that should be no problem for Jae'Sean Tate. He's playing plenty of minutes. He's been productive. His price is right on both sites. Great matchup. So I like Jae'Sean Tate here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the center position. I like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 17th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 41.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. He scored 43, 29, and 63 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 23, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 41.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $8,400 FanDuel salary and $300 less on DraftKings. Now I like this pick because Rudy Gobert has scored 43, 55, 39, 39, and 57 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Grizzlies. I love that player versus team history, so I like Rudy Gobert here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Okay, another center that I like, probably a DraftKings only play for me. I like Steven Adams from the New Orleans Pelicans playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, but they give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Steven Adams has averaged 24.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 12% usage rate. He scored 19, 22, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 41, 25, and 36 minutes. He's projected at 26.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's 5,500 FanDuel salary, but he's 600 less on DraftKings. So only 4,900 DraftKings salary for Steven Adams. Even though this is a back-to-back, that price just seems a little bit too low. He could score 24 fantasy points here and get you 5 times value on DraftKings. It's a pretty low bar. A guy that's got pretty easy 30 plus fantasy point upside. So he's got a great chance to hit or exceed value here. He scored 8, 21, 28, 47, and 36 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Mavericks. So 4 out of those 5 games would have been getting close to or definitely exceeding 5 times value. A couple of games he would have crushed value. So I like Steven Adams here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, now here's a high risk, high reward tournament play. I like Derek Favors from the Utah Jazz playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have they've got a middle of the pack defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing centers, Derek Favors has averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 16 minutes per game with a 13% usage rate. He scored 20, 26, and 19 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 16, 16, and 13 minutes. So the risk here, of course, is he's not playing very many minutes per game right now, but he does produce 1.14 fantasy point per minute. So if he can get you 16 minutes, he's probably going to score you over 20 fantasy points here and get you over 5 times value on both sites. His price is 3,600 FanDuel salary and 100 less on DraftKings. Now he scored 20, 21, 23, and 23 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Grizzlies. So he would have got you 5 times value or more in all of those 5 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. So I think he makes a nice tournament play, high risk, high reward play. I like Derek Favors here versus the Memphis Grizzlies.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.